The blizzard raged like an unrelenting monster across the Colorado Rockies, swallowing the highway in a blanket of white fury. I, Mark Thompson, gripped the steering wheel of my pickup truck, my heart pounding not just from the storm, but from the secret I had carried for years, the truth that I was gay in a town where that word still carried whispers and judgment. But when I spotted the overturned SUV in the ditch, its lights flickering weakly, I didn't hesitate. 3 small faces pressed against the window, terrified, their parents slumped motionless in the front. I kicked open my door and fought through the wind, pulling the children out one by one, little Tommy, Sarah, and Jake, wrapping them in my jacket as I carried them to safety. By the time rescuers arrived, the parents were gone, but the kids were alive because of me. That night, as I sat in the hospital waiting room, the local news called me a hero. Little did I know that this act would echo through the years, shaping not just their lives, but mine in ways I could never have predicted. The next morning, the whole town of Crestwood knew my name. My parents hugged me tight at the breakfast table, my mother wiping tears while my father clapped my shoulder and said, "That's my boy, always doing the right thing. Now it's time you found a nice girl and settled down." I forced a smile, the familiar knot twisting in my stomach. They had no idea the nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if loving another man made me less of the son they raised. My best friend Ryan stopped by later, eyes narrowed like he was trying to read something between my words. "You risked everything out there, Mark. What's really driving you?" I brushed it off, but his question lingered. The kid's aunt from Denver took them in after the funerals. She sent me a card a week later thanking me for saving her niece and nephews. I kept it on my desk at the auto shop where I worked, a quiet reminder that one desperate night had changed 4 lives forever. But life moved on. I threw myself into long hours under hoods and engines, trying to drown the loneliness that grew heavier every winter. Then, 6 months after the storm, I met Jeremy at a community fundraiser for avalanche awareness. He was the new social worker in town, tall with kind brown eyes and a laugh that cut through the noise like sunlight. We talked for hours about the mountains, about second chances, about the kind of family you choose. When he asked for my number, my hand shook as I typed it in. For the first time in years, the secret didn't feel quite so heavy. We started slow, coffee, then hikes on weekends when the snow melted. Jeremy never pushed, but I could feel his patience wearing thin every time I changed the subject when he asked about my family. They wouldn't understand, I told him one evening on my porch as the sun dipped behind the peaks. He just nodded, but the hurt in his eyes stayed with me long after he left. Meanwhile, Ryan kept dropping hints at the shop. "You've been different since you met that guy from Denver. You sure everything's straight?" I laughed it off, but the lie burned. The kids sent me drawings from time to time, stick figures of a man pulling them from white chaos. I pinned them to my fridge, never guessing those crayon lines would one day pull me back from my own storm. 2 years slipped by like melting snow. Jeremy and I built something real in the quiet spaces between my fears. We shared quiet dinners at his apartment, talked about everything except the future I was too scared to claim. He had come out to his own family years ago and moved west for a fresh start. His courage made my silence feel like betrayal. One night after a long shift, I found him waiting on my porch with takeout. "Mark, I'm not asking you to shout it from the rooftops," he said softly. "But I need to know if I'm part of your life or just a secret you visit when no one's looking." The words hit harder than the blizzard wind. I wanted to tell him everything. How my parents still set me up with daughters of their church friends. How Ryan's jokes at work had turned sharper. Instead, I pulled him close and whispered, "You are my life." But even then, the words felt half true. The misunderstanding came on a rainy Friday. Ryan saw Jeremy's car outside my house and cornered me at the shop the next morning. "Dude, people are talking. You and that social worker? Come on, man, your folks would lose it." I denied it too fast, too loud. Jeremy heard the rumor through a mutual friend and showed up furious. "You told him we were just buddies helping with the kids' memorial fund?" His voice cracked. I tried to explain, but the damage was done. He left without letting me finish, and for 2 weeks the silence between us felt worse than any winter alone. I threw myself into work, fixing cars until my hands bled, wondering if loving him openly would cost me the only family I had ever known. Then the letter arrived. The kid's aunt wrote that Tommy, now 10, Sarah 11, and Jake 13, wanted to see me. They were coming to Crestwood for a memorial hike in honor of their parents. I agreed, heart racing. When they ran up to me at the trailhead, taller now, but with the same wide eyes, something shifted inside me. Tommy hugged me first. "You saved us, Mark. You're like our guardian angel." Sarah slipped a new drawing into my hand, this one of me standing tall against the storm. Jake just grinned and said, "We told everyone at school about you." Their aunt smiled gratefully, and for the first time the secret felt smaller. I invited Jeremy to join the hike at the last minute. He came, hesitant, but the kids adored him instantly. Watching him laugh with them under the summer sun, I realized the family I had saved was teaching me what real acceptance could look like. But back home my parents sensed the change. My mother set me up on another blind date, and when I refused, the question started. "Mark, are you ever going to give us grandchildren?" My father added quietly, "We just want you happy, son." I left the dinner table early, chest tight. Ryan cornered me again at work. "Look, I'm your friend. If there's something you need to tell me." I almost broke then, but the fear won. That night, I drove to Jeremy's, ready to apologize, ready to try. He opened the door, eyes tired. "I missed you," he said simply. "We didn't fix everything, but we held each other until dawn, and I promised myself I would find the courage soon." Life settled into a fragile rhythm. Jeremy and I grew closer in private, stealing weekends in Denver where no one knew us. He taught me it was okay to dream about a future together, maybe a small house, maybe fostering kids who needed a safe place. The idea terrified and thrilled me at the same time. The three children kept in touch. Their aunt sent photos of school plays and soccer games. Tommy even called me once after a bad day, asking for advice like I was the big brother he never had. "You always knew what to do in the storm," he said. His words stayed with me. I started volunteering at the youth center Jeremy ran, helping teenagers who reminded me of my younger self, scared, hiding pieces of who they were. The first Real crack appeared at the annual town festival. Ryan had too much to drink and pulled me aside near the bonfire. "I saw you and Jeremy at the Overlook last week. Mark, it's okay if you know. But your dad's been asking me questions. I covered for you. But how long can you keep this up?" His words felt like betrayal wrapped in concern. I shoved him away, heart hammering. The next morning my mother called, voice trembling. "Ryan mentioned you might be seeing someone special. Why haven't you brought him home?" I hung up, panic rising. Jeremy sensed the shift immediately. "You're pulling away again," he said quietly over coffee. The misunderstanding bloomed into our first real fight. "I'm not ashamed of you," I insisted. "I'm protecting us." He shook his head. "Protecting me or protecting your image?" I spent the next week replaying every moment, wondering if love required this much hiding. Then the kids' aunt called with news. They were moving back to Crestwood permanently. The children, now teenagers full of energy, wanted to be closer to the mountains their parents loved. They asked if I would help them settle in. I said yes without thinking, and when I told Jeremy, he smiled for the first time in days. "See? You're already building the family you're afraid to claim." His words stung because they were true. The turning point came quietly at first. I helped the kids move into their new house on Maple Street. Tommy, now 15, cornered me in the garage. "Mark, you and Jeremy we've known for years. It's cool. You saved us once. We just want you happy." Sarah and Jake nodded behind him. Their simple acceptance cracked something open inside me. That night, I drove straight to Jeremy's and finally said the words I had practiced for years. "I'm done hiding. I love you, and I want everyone to know." He pulled me into a kiss that felt like the first real breath after years underwater. But as we celebrated quietly, I had no idea the storm I had escaped years ago was about to return. Bigger, angrier, and aimed straight at the life I had finally claimed. The secret didn't stay secret long. Ryan, hurt that I hadn't trusted him first, let something slip at the shop. By Monday, the whole town buzzed with rumors. My parents showed up at my door that evening, faces pale. "Is it true?" my father asked, voice flat. My mother couldn't even look at me. I told them everything. About Jeremy, about the years of fear, about how saving those children had shown me what real bravery meant. They left without a word, and the silence that followed felt colder than any blizzard. Jeremy stood beside me through it, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "They'll come around," he said, but we both knew it might not be that simple. Work became unbearable. Customers whispered. A few stopped bringing their cars altogether. Ryan avoided me, the betrayal complete. I threw myself into helping the kids instead. Tommy, Sarah, and Jake had grown into remarkable teenagers, kind, loud, fiercely loyal. They started coming by the youth center, helping with programs, and slowly the town saw the hero who saved them still had a heart worth trusting. Jeremy and I moved in together quietly, a small apartment above the garage. Nights were filled with laughter and plans, but days carried the weight of stares and unanswered calls from my parents. The misunderstanding that nearly broke us came from my own fear again. A friend of Jeremy's from Denver visited and flirted harmlessly at a barbecue. I overreacted, accusing Jeremy of not understanding how hard this was for me. He left for the night, and I sat alone realizing how much I still let shame control me. When he returned the next morning, he said simply, "I'm not going anywhere, but you have to choose us every day." I promised I would. The 3 kids became our biggest supporters. Sarah helped decorate the apartment. Jake taught me how to grill properly. Tommy just grinned and said, "You two are gross, but in a good way." Their acceptance was the anchor I needed. Then the town council announced a special ceremony to honor local heroes, including me for that long-ago rescue. They wanted the kids to speak. I agreed, nervous but hopeful. Jeremy squeezed my hand. This could be the moment everything changes. I didn't know how right he was. As the date approached, my parents still hadn't spoken to me. Ryan sent one text, "Sorry, man. I was wrong." The apology came too late. The storm I had survived once was gathering again, and this time it would test every bond one had built. The night of the ceremony, the community center was packed. Cameras flashed as the mayor praised my bravery from 10 years earlier. Tommy, Sarah, and Jake, now 17, 18, and 20, stood tall beside me in their best clothes. Jeremy sat in the front row, proud and steady. My parents were nowhere in sight. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short, thanking the kids for reminding me what family really meant. Then Sarah stepped to the microphone, voice clear and strong. "Mark didn't just save our lives that night. He showed us that heroes come in all kinds of packages. We're proud to call him family." The applause was warm, but I felt the undercurrent of whispers. The trouble started right after the speeches. A group of older residents gathered near the exit, faces hard. Someone had printed flyers with my name and Jeremy's, crude questions about the real story behind the hero. Ryan stood at the edge of the crowd, looking ashamed but silent. The murmurs grew into shouts. "This town doesn't need that kind of example," someone yelled. The crowd pressed closer, anger rising like the blizzard wind I once fought. I reached for Jeremy's hand, ready to leave, but the kids moved first. Tommy stepped in front of me, shoulders squared. "Back off. This man risked everything for us when we were kids. You don't get to judge him now." Sarah joined him, voice steady. "He taught us kindness when the world took our parents. If you have a problem with who he loves, you have a problem with us." Jake, the oldest, raised his phone. "We're live on social media right now. The whole state can see how Crestwood treats its heroes." The crowd hesitated. Phones came out. The angry voices faltered. In that moment, the 3 children I had pulled from the snow became the shield I never knew I needed. Jeremy stood beside me, tears in his eyes, and for the first time I felt truly seen. Not as the closeted mechanic or the town hero, but as a man who had finally found his way home. My parents appeared at the edge of the crowd then, faces pale but determined. My mother pushed through and hugged me tightly. "We were wrong," she whispered. "We almost lost you because we were scared." My father nodded, eyes wet. "You saved those kids once. Looks like they saved you right back." The misunderstanding, the betrayal, the years of hiding, all of it melted in the warmth of that moment. Jeremy squeezed my hand, and I knew we had survived the worst storm yet. The months that followed brought healing none of us expected. My parents invited Jeremy to Sunday dinners, awkward at first, but slowly genuine. Ryan apologized in person, and we rebuilt our friendship on honesty instead of secrets. The kids, Tommy, Sarah, and Jake, became regular parts of our lives. They helped us move into a bigger house on the edge of town, one with a yard big enough for the dog Jeremy had always wanted. I watched them grow into adults who carried the same courage I had seen in their younger eyes that terrible night. Jeremy and I stood on the porch one crisp autumn evening, the mountains glowing gold. He turned to me and said, "You once told me you were protecting us by hiding. Turns out the best protection was letting the people who matter see the real you." I pulled him close, the same man who had once been too afraid to hold his hand in public. The journey had been long, full of misunderstandings that nearly tore us apart, betrayals that tested every bond, sacrifices that cost me sleep and pride, and truths that forced me to face the man I was meant to be. But every step had been worth it. The three kids who had once been small and freezing now stood taller than the fear I once carried. They had returned not just to thank me, but to show me that love, real love, creates its own family. As the sun set behind the peaks, I realized the blizzard that almost took their lives had given me mine back in ways I could never have imagined. True or false? A single act of kindness can redefine family and love in ways blood never could.